Let's pay homage to the lineage gurus. Homage to the Venerable Monk Liao Ming. Homage to Master Sakya Zhengkong. Homage to His Holiness the 16th Karmapa. And homage to Master Thupten Dorji. Homage to the three jewels of the altar. Homage to the main deity today, Mahajundi Buddha Mother. Sư Mẫu Tan Chân Cát Châu, Thupten Siddhi, all Dharma masters, Dharma educators, Dharma teachers, Dharma lecturers, Dharma assistants, directors of temples and chapters, and all true Buddha school disciples. Good evening, everyone. How do you do? Aisteru. Sarange.
Hola, amigo.
Hola, amigo.
Te quiero mucho.
Quiero mucho.
Sugoin.
Sugoin.
Ichiban.
Ichiban.
Kimochi ii.
Kimochi ii.
Chumi.
Chumi.
Yapi. Pling pling.
Pling pling.
Konbanwa.
Konbanwa.
大家一切都好，平安吉祥。
May everything is well and auspicious.
大家
I wish you the best. Prior to the Dharma teaching, let me share a joke first. Xiaoming asked his dad, Dad, why is your name is Chunsheng, which is born in spring? And the dad replies, because my dad was a village chief. Therefore, your dad is called the springborn. And Xiaoming said, and how about if granddad is a director, then the dad's name would be, this is play of words of Chinese. So Chunzang, Chunsheng. So from, yeah, this is only meaningful in Chinese.
这个就是逻辑上的一个笑话，逻辑
It's a joke about Chinese logic. And talking about Lamdre, it also talk a lot about logics. And Buddhism in Tibet, there are the 5 sciences. So the medical science, crafts, arts and crafts, the inner sciences, the sciences of sound, and the sciences of logics. So the science of medicine, or Chikitsa Vidya, is about the medical knowledge. And then the science of arts and crafts, like nowadays it would be like technology, about skills. And then science of spirituality, that's like Buddha Dharma or Buddhism or Adhyatma Vidya. And then the science of language, which is Sabda Vidya, like you need to understand, like for Grandmaster would be Taiwanese, Mandarin, Japanese, English, conversation, and the science of logic, or Hetu Vidya. That joke was kind of about logic. So you use comparison, pramana of comparison, to derive. So the science of logic, the science of language, the science of inner spirituality, the science of medicine, and the science of arts and crafts. So in Tibet, most people would study these 5 sciences, or Panchavidya. So now we will do the question and answer. The first one, Lotus Geneva pays homage to the lineage guru, living Buddha Lien Sheng. My questions. First, according to the stages of spiritual cultivation, is it true that we should first attain spiritual union with the yidam before moving on to the inner tantric practices? This is called the gradual practice. So you practice according to the stages. So according to the stages of spiritual cultivation, you first attain spiritual union with the yidam before you practice the inner tantra. With the blessings from the yidam, it would be easier to have attainments in your inner tantric practices. That is the theory. But for some people, in Tibetan Tantrayana, they practice yidam and they practice the inner tantra. So outwardly, you practice the deity yoga, and internally, you practice the inner fire or tumo. So there are some people who practice them together. And there are also some who first practice the deity yoga before the inner tantra practices. One is called the external practice, the other one internal practice. And there's also the secret practice, like the highest yoga tantra, or the topmost secret practice. And that's the appearance of the mandala all over the body and the lucidity and clear light radiance. So that depends on your spiritual route. For typical people, it's best to first practice the deity yoga before the inner tantra. So when you practice, but if you want to practice both the deity yoga and inner tantra, it's okay according to Grandmaster. However, if you don't have any spiritual responses in your deity yoga and no responses in your inner tantra practices, then you should not perform the highest yoga tantra practices. So you have to have attainments in your deity yoga and inner tantric practices before performing the highest yoga tantra. Once you emit the clear light radiance, your 5 chakras naturally open and would manifest the 5 different colors and to manifest the rainbow light. And that would be this topmost secret practice, which is the highest practice of the great perfection. So the highest secret, the highest yoga tantra and the topmost secret yoga cannot be done without spiritual union with the deity, without attainments in your deity yoga and the inner tantric practices. Now you're clear. Therefore, the attainments in the deity yoga and the inner tantra can be done together. However, the highest yoga tantra's requirements are attainments in the deity yoga and inner tantra attainments. The second question: how do we know whether we have attained spiritual union with Yidam? What are the signs? What kinds of transformation will we experience in body and mind? We have talked about this last week. What I meant, once you gain spiritual union with your Yidam, then it's like you are having chemistry with your Yidam. So you're connected already. Those are the sign. So what kind of changes will happen in our body and mind? Of course there will be changes because gradually you're becoming your Yidam. Because you have gained spiritual union with your Yidam, right? So you're gaining more chemistry inside you, and you gradually become your Yidam, and your body is becoming the body of Yidam. Your heart or mind is becoming the mind of the Yidam. So that's the changes to the body and mind. So we have talked about this, about question 2. Very simple. So you have the electric current inside your body. So it's like the electric current in entering into your body. So it's like Grandmaster, when the deities enter, like just now, prior to the group practice, we performed the brief practice and the deity entered me. And you could see it, that there were changes to Grandmaster. Like today, I have not drank this cup of tea, and I made offering of this cup of tea to Chundi Buddha Mother. We pray to Chundi Buddha Mother to please accept the offering of this cup of tea. Then you feel the electric current or the chemistry. So when she accepted the offering, it's like Grandmaster is being electrocuted, like feeling the electric current. And this Grandmaster often make this gesture. It's like Grandmaster is being touched by the electric current. So different people may feel differently, but that's how Grandmaster feels. It's like I'm being touched by an electric current. And that's one of the signs of a spiritual response from the deity. The third question, what are the consequences of practicing the inner tantra before attaining the spiritual union with the yidam? There shouldn't be any consequences. To practice the inner tantra first, and then practicing deity yoga. You should practice them together, would be better. You practice the deity yoga and the inner tantra, would be slightly better. After listening to Grandmaster's exposition on inner tantra, practice the qi or vital energy of breathing first. The risk of the treasure-based energy yoga is more forceful. So you need to know the key formulas and the pith teaching before you perform the inner tantra practices. It's more intense, the treasure-based energy yoga. I remember Grandmaster once mentioned that the bodhisattvas have slim waist. So if one practices and one's waist becomes fat, does it mean it is wrong? Amitabha. Many bodhisattvas have slim waist because primarily when you practice qi, you have to tuck in your abs, your abdomens. If Grandmaster doesn't tuck in my abdomen, I also feel my belly is quite round. But let me tell you, when Grandmaster was young, I really have 6 packs. I practice on my own until my waist, I have 6 packs in my abs. And now, I have done sit-ups in my paint drawing room. There's a machine there to lift up my legs and place it back down, up and down and up and down. It's also to train your abs. Why the bodhisattvas have slim waist? Because in their qi practice, they have to tuck in or to pull in their abs. And you can see many people Many bodhisattvas also have thick waists, like the Vajra protectors. It's sculpted like that, like the four heavenly kings. They have pretty big bellies, or the Chinese version of the Maitreya Bodhisattva is different from the Tibetan version. The Tibetan Maitreya has slim waist, but the Chinese Maitreya has a big belly. So your question, some bodhisattvas have slim waists and some have thick waist and bellies. And so if based on the abdomens, that's nothing wrong. Grandmaster had slim waist before. Like what I said, at 1 year old, you have merriment in your birth. At 10, you're into your study. At 20, you're at the top of your youth. At the 30s, you're into your career. At 40s, you start to gain weight. So people after 40 would start to have bigger bellies, for both men and women. That's natural. So the bodhisattvas have slim waists because they practice the inner tantra. But it's okay to have big bellies, but not too big. If you have bellies too big, it's okay for women if they're pregnant. And you have to rely on exercises to flatten your abs. But having big bellies are also natural. It's nothing wrong with in terms of spiritual practices. Now, Grandmaster's belly is not considered small, but it's also not considered big, because when I lift up my chi, it becomes small, but if I relax, then it becomes protruding more. Another question. In Grandmaster's book number 275, Pith's teaching in the Path of Liberation, in one of the appendixes, I read about Grandmaster's conferring the empowerment of the 4 preliminary practices. My question is, do we need an empowerment to practice the 4 preliminary practices? If so, can we obtain a remote empowerment for it? In the appendix of the 5th teaching in the Path of Liberation, it talks about the empowerment for the 4 preliminary practices. For Tributa school, when you receive the refuge initiation empowerment, that includes the 4 preliminary practices. If you want a particular empowerment for each of it, that's okay too. Otherwise, the refuge initiation empowerment includes the 4 preliminary practices. Because in True Buddha school, the refuge initiation and empowerment for four preliminary practices are together. So when you take refuge, that already includes the four preliminary practices. But if you want empowerment for each of them, it's okay too. So if you want the empowerment one by one, can you receive it remotely? Yes. Any empowerments within the base empowerment can be done remotely, but not for the others. So the next question, in doing the 9 cycle Buddha breathing, should we keep the tip of the tongue touching the upper palate? So in doing the 9 cycle Buddha breathing, should we keep the tip of the tongue touching the upper palate? We should say it, that having the tip of the tongue touching the upper palate is one of the 7 postures of the Vairocana sitting. The 7 sitting postures of Vairocana is you fold both legs and the soles of the feet are facing up. So the 2 soles are facing up and the 2 shoulders also facing up. The head and the tip of the head is also facing up, upright. The tip of the tongue touching the upper palate, and your spine should be straight, and you tuck in your chin. The tip of the tongue touch the upper palate. This is the 7 sitting postures of Vairocana. Both soles facing up, both palms facing up, both shoulders facing up, the head is upright, the spine straight, the tip of the tongue touching the palate and tucked in your chin. These are the basic of the 7 sitting postures of Vairocana. Therefore, when you perform the 9 cycle Buddha breathing, you have to keep the tip of your tongue touching the upper palate. In Taoism, the tip of the tongue touching the upper palate is like bridging the heaven. So the apex opening and the throat are not connected. And when you place the tip of your tongue to the upper palate, you connect them. So in Taoism, it's like you're bridging to the crown or to the heaven. So the tongue is like a bridge to connect the heaven or the crown So in Buddhism, we talk about the tip touching the upper palate. So this is necessary. And remember, There is a joke about the pandemic that in the year of 2025, which is the future, there's a little girl asking her mom, Mom, who's my dad? Who's my dad? A 5-year-old girl asked her mom, who's my dad? And mom replied, I cannot tell you who your dad is. Because in 2020, when we were together, he was wearing a mask. So in the year of 2025, a 5-year-old girl asks her mom, who's my dad? And mom replied, I cannot tell you because I could not recognize your dad, because at that time your dad was wearing a mask. That's a joke about the pandemic. A little girl gave lots of good snacks to the little boy that she likes, and the girl's dad pretended to be jealous. Hey, save some for me. I was your lover from past life. And the little girl looked at her dad and said, Hey, that was from past lives. Why are you still talking about it? Now let's continue on Lamdre. The title is 37 Body Division. Which is 37 kinds of supplementary or beneficiary supplements to help you gain enlightenment. On the worldly path, at the initial accumulation period, it stresses on the qi as the secret to success, using the earth qi for fleet-footedness to counter the confrontational divisions. You can check the Buddhist terms on the 4 fleet-footedness. You can check in the Buddhist dictionaries. Inside the 37 body divisions, there are 4 fleet-footedness to counter your habitual tendencies, to counter your own habitual tendencies, and they are called the 4 fleet-footedness. And you use the qi. And then you use the 4 fleet-footedness of the qi to counter your own habitual tendencies. And what are the 4 fleet-footedness? And these four kinds of fleet-footedness occur due to the energy, to your own qi, to counter your own habitual tendencies. In the middle accumulation period, this jumped. It uses the four mindful abidings to counter the confrontation of the empty division. So, to counter the empty division. And this emptiness also has four kinds of emptiness. When we practice the inner tantra, there are four blisses, four kinds of bliss, which are transformed into four emptiness. As I remember, emptiness, great emptiness, supreme emptiness, empty emptiness, the finer division of the emptiness. So the four mindfulness to counter the four emptiness. So what is the empty division? Because they are divisions in the emptiness. There are four kinds of emptiness, from the beginning to the highest kind. So we use four mindfulness to counter the four emptiness. And what are the four mindfulness or four mindful abidings? Those are the four mindful abidings. Master Lian Wang is a very good master. He knows everything. So what are the four fleet-footedness? What are the four mindful abidings? They are all part of the 37 body divisions. You can check the dictionaries. And they can be used to counter the empty divisions. When you reach emptiness, what do you use to reach the first level of emptiness or the second level? Like emptiness, the great emptiness, the extraordinary emptiness, or the empty emptiness. And in the latter accumulation period, it uses the four correct stoppings to counter the fitness that occur upon bliss. These 12 body divisions are considered as the worldly path. So the above 12 body divisions are considered as the worldly path. And in the latter accumulation period, it uses the four correct stoppings to counter the fitness upon bliss. And what is the bliss? There are four kinds of blisses: the initial bliss, the supreme bliss, the superior bliss, and the innate bliss. And what is the faintness? That you're so blissful that you're about to faint. So it is happy to die. So faintness upon bliss, and bliss has the initial bliss, superior bliss, supreme bliss, and innate bliss. utmost bliss and innate bliss. So 4 kinds of blisses are countered by the 4 correct stoppings. And what are the 4 correct stoppings? So you use the precepts to stop evil. So you use the correct meditation to stop the evil. And to practice to the goodness to stop evil. So there are 4 correct stoppings. To counter the initial bliss, supreme bliss, the utmost bliss or superior bliss, and then the innate bliss. And the second is the out-of-worldly path. That's even more profound. So, below the 6 grounds of the out-worldly path are the altar of the bodily channels, the 4 palaces, 3 main channels, and 7 appearances, etc. Move on the 7 sensational branches, relying primarily on the channels. So this is the tantric method, which is slightly different from the 37 body divisions of Mahayana, or the Bodhipakkhiya Dhamma of Mahayana. The Mahayana uses the Bodhipakkhiya Dhamma, or the 37 body divisions. In Tantrayana, out-of-worldly path, below the 6 grounds of the out-of-worldly path are the altar of the bodily channels, the 4 palaces, 3 main channels, and 7 appearances, etc., moving on the 7 sensation branches, relying primarily on the channels. So, the 7 sensation branches to help your body, channels, altars, palaces, the 4 palaces, the 3 main channels, central, left, and right, the 7 appearances, moving on the 7 sensation branches, primarily relying on the channels. So like 7 branches. 1, it's also part of the 37 body divisions, or 37 qualities. So that's to counter the qi channels, the 4 palaces, the 3 main channels, central channel, left channel, and right channel, and the 4 palaces. other than brow
有一个宫殿，
chakra.
新的那个宫殿
The palaces are at the throat chakra, heart chakra, navel chakra, and secret chakra.
就是4个宫殿，
Those are the 4
4
palaces,
个坛城，
the 4 altars.
4个宫殿，它的意思是这样子。
4 palaces are for the 4 altars.
所谓6地以下，就是
So below the 6 grounds
以下
are the
出世间道
6 grounds of bodhisattvahood.
先从出地
The out-of-bodily path starts from the initial ground to the 6th
这里是
ground.
讲出世间道，另外以4地间中脉，
And
除了6地
for
之
the
外，
4 grounds,
上在4地，
so above
气
the first 6 grounds,
配
for the next 4 grounds, the earth energy gains self-mastery inside the central channel and moves together with the 5 roots.
配5根而行道，5根，另外就是又有5种，
So the 5
又有5
roots,
种。
5 kinds.
那个时候呢，在你的中脉当中，
So at that
修的
time,
气
inside your central channel,
仪式
your
之间
qi
气是
has gained the self-mastery.
这个就是等于10地以上，
And on the 2 grounds, which is
就是第12地，
the 2 grounds
第12地
above the 10 grounds, so that would be the 11th and 12th ground,
转成力
the
的
earth energy is transformed into power and moves as the 5 powers.
4地，
Here, the one on the 4 grounds of the secret empowerment and the 2 grounds of the wisdom
这个就是
empowerment
可以解释
stresses on the qi or vital energy. So we can explain this. So on the 11th and 12th ground,
6地以下，出世间道6地
So
以下，
in the out-of-bodily path,
6地
they
以
are
上
the first 6 grounds, and then above it, up to the 10th ground, there are 4 grounds, and then the 11th and the 12th ground.
跟第12地以地气转成力，
The earth energy is transformed into power.
产生出来，叫做实力。菩萨有10种力量，
So the Buddha has 10 kinds of powers.
5种力量，去用5种力量。
So on the 11th and 12th ground, it moves as 5 powers. And the one on the 4 grounds of secret empowerment and 2 grounds of wisdom empowerment stresses on the qi. So we still use the qi to transform into power. And 5 powers is also part of the 37 body divisions or the Bodhipakkhiya Dhamma. And a bodhisattva also has 10 kinds of powers. And here is talking about the 11th and 12th ground. In Tantrayana, up till 12 and a half grounds are considered bodhisattva. But in Mahayana Buddhism, the bodhisattva is only up to the 10th ground. So in Mahayana Buddhism, above the 10th ground, that would be Buddhahood. But in Tantrayana, up to the 12th ground is bodhisattvahood. Only on the 13th ground, the Buddhahood starts. So the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, Vairocana Buddha, Amitabha Buddha, Akshobha Buddha, Ratnasambhava Buddha, Amoghasiddhi Buddha, they all are on the 13th ground. That's in Tantrayana. And in Mahayana, they only have 10 grounds for the bodhisattvas. And on the 12 and a half ground, one moves as the Eightfold Noble Paths, which are the result of the transformation of the eighth consciousness into five wisdoms. One primarily relies on the consciousness of naturally occurring lucidity. These are the 25 body divisions of the outwardly path. So in Tantrayana, Lamdre was written by Virupa. This was his believed eyes, nose, ears, tongue, body, mind, consciousness, and then Mona consciousness, Alaya consciousness. So the eight consciousness transform into the five wisdoms, which are the wisdom of the Dharma, Dhatukaya, the wisdom of great perfection, wisdom of mirror-like, and marvelous observation, and wisdom of accomplishing all. So the eight consciousness include for the eyes, nose, ears, tongue, body, mind, and then the Mona and Alaya consciousness transform into five wisdoms that result in the eightfold noble paths. We all know about that. The eight noble paths. The right mind, the right thought, etc. So the naturally occurring lucidity, or the self-understanding lucidity, so the clear light lucidity, the consciousness of the self-arising clear light lucidity. So the above are the 25 body divisions of the outwardly path. So the eightfold noble paths with the result of the eighth consciousness transforming into the five wisdoms. So we do it as the eightfold noble paths. Then altogether would be a total for 37 body divisions or 37 qualities or Bodhipakkhiya Dhamma. Recently, I read the Mahamudra of No Jongpa. From the Kagyupa, the Jongpa for Mahamudra, the greatest patriarch or lineage guru for Mahamudra. And Lamdre belongs to the Sakyapa. So he applied the 37 body divisions on the chi channels, light drops, palaces, the development of those. So how to open the 37 body divisions, and finally to transform the eight consciousness into the five wisdoms using the eightfold noble paths. If you walk the path using the eightfold noble paths, you can attain Buddhahood as the Buddha did. So if you reach the Eightfold Noble Paths, then you would have attainments. That's the highest realm. So you use the Eightfold Noble Paths to walk the path, to help your own eight consciousness to transform into the 5 kinds of wisdoms of the Tathagata. And next, that would be Buddhahood. When people never, nobody ever studied it, would not be able to explain it like this. If they don't have any Buddhist knowledge, they would not be able to expound this like this. Therefore, we can say that Lamdre is very important in Tibetan Tantrayana, highly revered not just in Sakyapa, but in all 4 Tibetan sects. The military is in training, and all of a sudden, the leader came and said, this group gets lazy, or you don't train, no wonder you're all very fat. Because we're a special troop, but in Chinese it sounded like heavy. Someone asked earlier, if you have big tummy, does that mean you don't practice well? Well, because you don't exercise, you don't train, that's why you have big belly. So you have to exercise and train. So this joke has a special meaning. So for the special troop, you have to be very fit. You cannot have big bellies. But in Chinese, it sounded like heavy troop. Going to the park for a morning jog. Now we have more elderly in the park, and there was an elderly man and having his feet hooked on the double bars and turning upside down for a few minutes. And we went there and like, what is he training? And when I got close to him, the elderly man said, come on, please help me down. His face is already red. He couldn't get down from the bars. Grandmaster did really well on the bars before. When I was young, like a monkey, I could do 25 times, 21 times single bar, pulling up myself on the single bar gymnastics. Now, the hero doesn't talk about the past glory. This is a joke about Xiaoming. after class, the teacher asked the students to tell a story. And Xiaoming said, "Let me talk about the story of my mom and dad. On Monday, my dad made a dish and mom said, it tastes bad, and dad slapped my mom. And dad said, I'm the one who cook." On Tuesday, dad bought a curtain and mom said that looked bad, and dad slapped mom again. Was it I or you that bought it? On Thursday, and the teacher asked, how about Wednesday? How come you mentioned Thursday already? And Xiaoming slapped the teacher. Was it I or you telling the story? And the teacher got enraged. Run home and call your mom and dad to school. Let me tell you, in practicing Buddhism, when we cultivate spiritually according to the stages, we would be more stable. And some people have greater wisdom, or we call them with the superior spiritual root. You can start with inner tantric practice. That's allowed too. And generally speaking, those with superior spiritual root, they can practice the deity yoga and inner tantric practices and can have attainments very fast. And moreover, without the path of merit accumulation or preliminary practices, very fast they gain enlightenment. They are seeing the path because they have the superior spiritual root. Quickly they can gain enlightenment. Then they can start performing the real practice. Because in their past lives, they have done lots of good deeds, so they have perfected the path of merit accumulation, and they have done the preliminary practices in the path in their past lives. Like the sixth patriarch Hui Neng, when just by hearing the Diamond Sutra, because it's non-abiding, the mind arises from abiding. Immediately he gained enlightenment. He was not educated, but he gained enlightenment. Why? Because he had superior spiritual root. Because in his past life he had done the practices of the path of merit accumulation and preliminary practices. So he's considered the superior spiritual root. So he gained enlightenment immediately. But there are very few of these kinds of people. Unless you're a Rinpoche, who was spiritual cultivators in their past lives. like Mahasadaka, which is great spiritual cultivators, have superior spiritual roots, and they understand a lot. They understand upon reading, like the sixth patriarch Huineng, the mind arising from non-dwelling. So immediately he comprehended the non-action. So non-abiding is the non-action. So the no motives. So he walked the path of enlightenment with no motives at all. So although it's non-abiding and non-action, he still walked the spiritual path, and immediately he gained enlightenment and also gained liberation. Someone, the building that he lived, the elevator was broken in the building that he lived, and he lived on the 7th floor. So his rented apartment is on the 7th floor, but the elevator was broken. So he climbed the stairs to get to the 7th floor. And then in front of his room, he realized he didn't have keys with him. So where was the key? He had to go to the landlord. So he climbed back down. He walked back down and got the key. And then he climbed the stairs again to the 7th floor to open the door. Afterwards, he came down to return the key to the landlord, and then climbed the stairs again to the 7th floor, and the door was closed again. What happened? And the lady next door politely told me, "Oh, because I saw your door was open, so I closed it for you." So he had to walk down again to get the key again. So climbing the stairs is just like cultivating spiritually. When we get there, we have to remember the pith instructions are the keys. In order to enter into the room of, or the palace of spiritual cultivation, like you have climbed with difficulty, but without the keys, which is the pith instructions of the Guru, then you need to have those keys in order to be able to enter into your room. And without your keys or the pith teachings from the Guru, you have to go up and down and up and down and up and down. And even when you open the door and you return the pith instructions to the Guru, and the door is closed again. So the pith instructions of the Guru is extremely important. So therefore, the pith teachings to the path of liberation, you have to pay good attention to them and remember those key formulas. And you always carry the keys with you at any time. Then you can gain liberation. That's all for today. Om Mani Padme Hum.